should be it. Okay. All right. Good, all working. So I won't go over this in depth because I don't need to tell you all how to suck eggs around this. But it's certainly what we're looking at is, you know, that juicy space in the middle there. So when we're looking at asset mapping, I mean, there's a lot of people who say asset mapping don't work. And in our participatory community building guidebook, there's a story in there of a lady who came up to me at a conference and said, we tried that, it didn't work. And she actually said that ABCD thing doesn't work. And when I said, well, can you tell me what that actually means? She said, yeah, I got my team together and we had the 6 assets and we wrote down everything we could think of and nothing happened. And I said, well, you know, you created a register. Good for you. So, you know, when we're looking at asset mapping, it is about a strategy to identify what's existing already there. That's that, you know, building community from the inside out that John and Jody talk about. It is a process of engaging and connecting the community to local issues and to build a better community. So a lot of, well, I've had a few people over the years who have said ABCD is like looking through rose-coloured glasses. You're only seeing the good. And when I explain to them, particularly this aspect of it, is that it's not ignoring needs. It's not ignoring issues or challenges, but it's not starting there. And if we can identify what those strengths and assets are, then we've got this wealth of information that we can address those needs or challenges with. So it's certainly not ignoring it, but we're not starting there. And that it's done by local residents, and that's really important. And I think this is going to shift in this environment now, particularly with people online, because what does local mean now? What does that actually mean to the people who are connecting? Being a nomad for 5 years, my community has been mainly online. My community has helped me move around the world to different work. So I haven't had a geographically based local community for a long time. It would still be done by those who are affected by the issue though. So whether it be the local residents or whoever it is around that particular topic of inquiry. So this is the atlas, what it looks like at the moment. So I'll give you a story about where this started from. Michelle and I had lots of discussions about the different elements of asset mapping and the different ways that we can kind of organize the assets, but also what about when it's targeted? Like when you're looking at something in particular, like a local community might say, well, we really want to look at the rejuvenating the local wetlands or something like that. So what's kind of our focus of inquiry? And it very much overlaps with appreciative inquiry. So how this one started forming was I was working in Jakarta in Indonesia with childcare services, and there was about 80 childcare services in the room. And well, no, there wasn't that. There was probably about 40 to 50 represented, and there was local community as well. So people who were affected by the issue. And we had 2 days to look at starting to think about what a community-led foster care plan would look like. So the local government had already said, here's a plan for foster care. They don't have anything like that at the moment. And the government has grabbed this Western idea and said, do it. And the services said, no, we want to explore other options. So when we first went there, so this was over a period of 18 months, I went there 4 times and we had 2-day forums each time. So we started looking from the outer part of this. So if you look at on the side there, we've got the micro and the macro. we'll start from the bottom up at the beginning. So that ecology and bioregionalism, Michelle and I are still really playing with that, with permaculture and the edge effect and a whole lot of stuff. So we didn't start there in Jakarta. We started with the systems. So when we were looking at the systems mapping, I asked everyone in the room to write on a sticky note one element of the system per sticky note, but write everything they could think of. And we started to cluster them up on the wall. And it wasn't to really dig into the system, it was to make the system visible. So once we had that all up on the wall, and there was a whole lot of overlaps, as you can imagine, and there was also, it was very uneven with all that top-down part from organisations and services about the system of childcare in Jakarta. Then there was a whole lot of community-based ideas. And then there was this little pocket of stuff called kinship care. And I was like, oh, what's that? What's that? That's interesting, really interesting. And so we explored that a little bit further as we went through this, but it was already there. They've already kind of got a system. They don't have to just take this Western one and recreate it. They've actually got something they can build on. So once we saw the system, that it was really big, and got a bit of feedback from people, and they were saying things like, no one person can possibly do all of that needs doing. That's just ridiculous. It is huge. It is overwhelming. It feels like we're drowning. It was, all of those really big stuff. But it was okay because it was visible. So then they were like, yeah, we can kind of park that there. We know that's what it looks like. So then we went into the organizational mapping. And with the organisational mapping, we did two things. One was we mapped all the organisations that were in the childcare system or sector. So we mapped who they were. Most of them were already up on the wall in the system. But the other thing was the people who were there did a mapping of their own organisational assets and what they had as an organisation that they could offer to support and strengthen the childcare system. So things like their resources, their networks, their photocopiers, their phones, their meeting spaces and rooms, like what is it that they have as an organisation that they can offer back to community to strengthen what community wanted to do. So instead of going in as the fixer or the band-aids or anything, it was kind of a bit of a, not a tick list, what's the word I'm trying, inventory, of the assets within an organisation that they could offer back. Then we went in to the next circle, to the partner stakeholder, and I'm going to show you an example of this one. The partner stakeholder mapping started off from Tamarack Institute, actually. It's called the Top 100 Partners. A few of you have seen it. And so we started looking at that. Who are the partners and the stakeholders who we already know, and what are the existing ones? So we had kind of above and below the line, potential and existing. So we had who we already knew and who could we also reach out to and form new relationships with. And then I'll show you the top 100 in a minute. Then we went into the community mapping. And in the community mapping, we looked at the 6 assets of ABCD. And I've got them up that I'll show you in a second as well. So then we mapped out with those 6 assets in community. You can start to see where they're already mentioned in the other areas of the atlas, but you can also be quite defined about which one that you want to focus on. So if it's associations that you want to focus on, then that's what you do, or what we call community groups and networks. Then we went into the individual level. So what are the individual assets of each person in the room? So they all did their own, we used the 5 H's, or what others know as the head, hand and heart. But we've got 2 other H's on there, which I'll show you in a second, and got people to have pairs conversations so they could share what their gifts were. And then after people had started to identify what their own individual skills were, then I asked them to look back out through that system that we just created with all the other mapping that we just did. And where can you offer the gifts and skills and talents that you just identified in yourself as an individual, where can you now offer them back out to the system? So even though it sounds like it kind of moves in and then goes back out, it's not that smooth, as you can imagine. It would be like, well, here's a glitch, or maybe we can go this way, or maybe there's someone else new that we've met, or, you know, so they all shift around. But it was a way that we could map everything that was there into the individual, and then offer them that platform to kind of share their own skills and abilities, and they felt that they then had agency. You know, they had that, yes, I have got all these skills actually, and this is where I can offer them back into the system. So this is the 5 H's. We won't go over them in detail now. How am I going for time, Michelle? Am I all right at the moment?
Yes, Dee, you're fine. You're fine.
Cool.
You've got about another 10 minutes to go.
Okay, thanks. So with this gifts, the 5 H's, we talk about gifts that we can offer others. So most ABCD practitioners know of the gifts of the head, hand, and heart. They're ones that have been around for a long time. The gifts of the heel is a really interesting one. And it actually first came from Bliss Brown from Imagine Chicago, who created a whole lot of resources around appreciative inquiry that I do believe, even though she's retired, she's still got them on the website. And so gifts of the heel was about things I do to, when I'm feeling overwhelmed or when I'm stressed, how do I calm myself down? It's like a gift to self, but we also all know that when you're highly stressed and you're affecting those around you, by you becoming calm is also a gift to them. So it's a gift for both. So that gift of the heel is about, oh, I love, that's the Indonesian words, things I do with others to become calm. I had to change it to that because Indonesia, they don't have a word for overwhelmed, which I thought was really interesting. So yeah, that was gifts of the heel. Then the gifts of human connection is, where do you stay connected? Do you join a group? Do you visit someone? What does it look like? Are you involved in your local time bank? You know, what is it that you do to make sure that you stay connected to your community? So that's in that individual level. There are other tools and strategies as well. There's a whole lot of them in that individual mapping. I'm just going to go over one each for a couple of them at the moment. There's a whole lot of others in our guidebook and also on the ABCD website. So then this is the community assets. So these 6 assets that came out of the ABCD Institute. And actually only 5 of them came out of the ABCD Institute, the first 5. In the UK and in Australia, associations and institutions as words don't work as well for us. It's very American language. So we changed it to this. So we've got number 1, there's that talent, skills and passions of individuals. So like we just talked about with individual mapping. Then we've got community groups and networks, and that can be formal or informal. Then our government and non-government agencies, which are institutions in America. And for your sake, Wendy, institutions here for us would mean that you might have lost your marbles a little bit and the men in white coats are coming to get you to take you to the institution. Right, so it kind of doesn't work for us as well here. So the government and non-government agencies is what we use. And it's interesting. I was at the institute, the ABCD Institute in Chicago in last December, and we had a conversation around associations and institutions, and it was interesting to think about, and it's something John McKnight's talked about for years, is that institutions don't care, people care. And people can still work associationally within an institution, but if they leave, the institution doesn't care. So, you know, when we're looking for or we're discovering care, we're actually looking at associations and the talents, skills, abilities of individuals. So yeah, then number 4 is your physical assets, and that is looking at physical assets in 2 ways. So you've got all your natural beaches, mountains, walks, all of those, but also your built environment. So your buildings, equipment, schools that are often gated and have commercial kitchens and big sporting fields and often underutilized. So we've got those there as well. Then the economic assets is the productive work of individuals. So what do individuals actually do? What is the work that they're contributing to the community? Their spending power, really powerful one. And the Cody Institute have a tool called the leaky bucket that some of you will know about. I'm sure Jess is nodding. And that's talking about, you know, the power of mapping the dollars. Where are the dollars going? Are they all leaving the community? Is everyone getting paid weekly or monthly and leaving the community to drive 100 miles away to do their shopping? So that consumer spending power can really make a difference when we map it and look at how it's spent, and are we supporting local shopping and all of that kind of stuff. And local businesses, of course, are a huge part of the economic assets. So then that was as far as the Institute got originally, John and Jody. Then it was our own Australian mate, Peter Kenyon with the Bank of Ideas, and David Wilson, who is in New Zealand with Heritage Futures. And they identified very strongly that this should be another asset. And of course, other people have adopted it now, and it's just kind of been merged into the assets. But the really important one is stories, you know, stories as an asset, and how powerful stories are. And, you know, Michelle and I will tell people in workshops that you will remember the stories that we tell you long after you remember any of the theory. It's that the stories stick like glue, and we can hear people's values and where they're coming from in those stories. And then, of course, the heritage of an area and the local identity can be really powerful thing to tap into. Thinking of different areas that you might live in or live near that have an iconic something, like we've got in Sydney the Harbour Bridge and the Opera House, like, you know, that's part of that. And then what are the local values as well? So some local values, I'm thinking of a community I was working with that one of their local identity was about equestrian events, and their values, they were very, very strong about animal rights, particularly in the horse industry. So they were very, very strong about that. And that's something that we can tap into. So then this is the stakeholder or partner mapping that came out of Tamarack. And it was without the bullseye. It's the quadrant. I've got it written up as a blog. I think it might be in our guidebook, about 3 different ways you can use this or apply it. And it is the most fabulous, simple tool to get a diverse crowd of people around the table. So if you're looking at those 4 quadrants, the business, government, non-government, voluntary, and lived experience, and if you're thinking that our central focus is, say, about homelessness, then each person in the core group, let's say it's the 8 or 9 of us, we write down everyone we know in the area in business, everyone we know in government and non-government, everyone we know who volunteers in the local area, and everyone with the lived experience. So in that example, it would be everyone we know who's homeless. After you've written everyone down, each person identifies the top 3 people from each quadrant that they know they're going to go and have a conversation and invite them back just to a planning meeting, not even an event or anything yet. And I did this once, started with about 6 people, went back, there was about 40 in the room for the planning meeting. We did the planning for an event. We were going to host a big community conversation. It was around disability and inclusion. We all 40 did this again before they left. So each of those people went and invited 12 people to come back. I went back for the event and there was over 200 people in the room, and there was people with the lived experience, there were volunteers, there was a fourth generational farmer who said, I don't even know why I'm here, but my mate asked me to come. So that was a big win for me. It was like, yes, this works. And some amazing stuff happened out of that. So it's a really lovely, simple, powerful tool. I think that's it. So the 3 key steps that we talk about with asset mapping is that you discover them, discover what they are, of course, join them up, but that's not the end of it. We don't just join them up and go, happy days. Our role as organisations, as community workers, as passionate community members, even, we're doing this with our own local hat on. We want to create the opportunities for these assets to be productive and powerful together. And that's where the power lies. That's where the real shift lies. Because we can discover assets and connect people up and go, isn't that fabulous? Look, they're best friends now. Or that's wonderful. They're all out horse riding together. But if we can help to create those opportunities, then what we're doing is actually creating the container for good work to happen. And from our perspective, in our participatory community building work, this is where a lot of the art of hosting tools sit, is in this creating opportunities, how we sit in circle, how we hold space, how we have difficult conversations, what do powerful questions look like, all of those kind of things all sit in that space. So I'm going to leave it there and stop talking.